All right, so pre and post workout nutrition, does it even matter? That is the question everybody wants to know. The answer, probably not as much as you would think. So this here is the nutrition pyramid for strength and muscle, which was originally coined by Eric Helms. But as you can see here, nutrient timing, which is essentially what we're talking about when we talk about pre and post workout meals, it's almost at the very top of the pyramid, which means that there are three things underneath it that are of more importance. So this is your energy balance, it's your calories in versus calories out. So it's about how many calories are you ultimately eating. And then your macronutrients, which are what is the makeup of those calories? What are the carbs, fats, and proteins that you're eating? And then the micronutrients. So, how many fruits and vegetables, how many really micronutrient rich foods are you eating? And then once you kind of nail all of these down, then we can start to talk about nutrient timing, which includes your pre and post workout meals. So like most things with nutrition, the answer really is just, it depends. Some people, yeah, it does matter a lot. And some of those people would be like athletes or anybody with hormonal concerns. Those are ones where you definitely need to optimize your nutrient timing. Those with muscle growth goals should definitely manage their nutrient timing, specifically things like protein and carbs around your workouts. And then stressed and tired individuals can definitely benefit from proper nutrient timing as well. So then, why is it that the gym bro is pushing protein powder on you? Should I be chugging a protein shake as soon as I finish my workout? The answer is no. So this term, the anabolic window of opportunity, which essentially means that if you don't down a protein shake or just some sort of protein immediately after training, then you will lose your gains. You will not be able to build muscle. You might even lose muscle. That concept has actually been debunked. The studies that really supported that idea back in the day, essentially what it was found is that any positive effect of post-workout protein consumption was really more explained not necessarily by the timing of eating that protein around your workout, but by the fact that when they gave people protein after their workouts, it increased their overall protein consumption. And most people, hopefully not like all of you guys, since you're working with an awesome coach like Kat, most people though are deficient in protein. A lot of people do not eat enough protein, but as long as you are eating enough protein for your body type and your goals, you probably don't need to worry so much about eating protein immediately after working out. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not helpful. So really without sufficient, got too excited there. Without sufficient total protein intake, you can't really grow muscle. Even if you're strength training, if you are not eating muscle, you're not going to see the gains. And that's because protein is the building block of muscles. So this is why, as a general insurance policy, it is good to consume about 30 grams of high quality protein 2 to 3 hours, both pre and post workout. Not only then are you ensuring that you're getting enough protein over the course of the day by spreading your protein consumption out, but just providing your muscles with that readily available protein, both right before your workout when you're going to be breaking down the muscles, and right after your workout when your muscles are primed to start rebuilding. But another really interesting concept is that some studies do show that the more muscles you use in your workout, the more protein you may need. So this might mean if you are doing like a high intensity full body program, you are probably engaging more muscles in your program. If you're doing a lot of big compound lifts, so things like a barbell squat, where you are engaging almost your entire body, that means you're going to be breaking down a lot of muscles and you might need more protein to rebuild those muscles. So think of it like if you were demoing a house. The more house you demo, the more building blocks you need to rebuild it. But super duper important concept. This should be bolded right here. This does not need to be a protein shake. There is no magic in protein powder, despite what the protein powder companies want you to believe. The fact is, protein shakes are just convenient, and that's why they've been sold as a workout supplement. It's not the fact that the protein shake does anything magical. When you have it after a workout, it's no more effective having it around a workout than it is having it any other part of the day. It's just the fact that it's convenient. So I like protein shakes because, you know, a lot of times after a workout, I'm just not hungry, and it's easier to down a protein shake than some chicken. Another important consideration here, though, is the type of protein you're eating. So this needs to be a high quality protein when we talk about getting that 30 grams plus of protein in your pre and post workout meals. High quality means that it contains all 9 essential amino acids. You might see this abbreviated as EAAs. How do you know if it has all the essential amino acids? Ask yourself, is it an animal-based protein product? So anything like meats, dairy, pretty much, you know, eggs, like all animal-based protein products are gonna contain all of the essential amino acids. Gelatin is really the exception there. But that doesn't mean that you can't have vegetable-based protein products. So if you are a vegetarian or vegan, or you just don't really like meat, you can make it work with vegetarian-based proteins. You just need to be smart about it, because these types of proteins individually lack different essential amino acids. So for example, grains contain protein, but they are limited in the EAA, lysine, and threonine. And then legumes are low in methionine. But if you combine the grains and the legumes, then you're getting all of the essential amino acids that those two lack from each other. Some other ideas here are shown of ways you can pair different plant proteins to make sure you're getting all the essential amino acids. Carbs are not, I can't talk tonight, I'm sorry. Carbs are the next macro to talk about because they are the fuel to your fire. So carbs are our body's favorite source of energy. If you were going to give your body the choice to run off of carbs or fats, despite what the keto zealots on Instagram might say, your body will choose carbs every single time. They are stored in the muscle cell as glycogen, so they are quickly accessible for high power output. Think like sprinting at max intensity or lifting a really heavy weight. Your body is pulling the carbs from the muscle cells to be able to power through that activity. And also, because it actually is stored in the muscle, it makes your muscles look fuller and more defined. So next time that you have a really high carb day, maybe check and see what you look like the next day when you go to work out. You might notice you get better, quote unquote, pumps. So like if you're doing a bicep curl, you might notice your bicep looks a little bit more full. That's because the carbs are filling it out. But it's super important when we talk about carbs that we are considering how can you position them around your training sessions to maximize your training. So aim to eat at least half of your total daily carb allotment in your pre and post-workout meals to essentially just top off your glycogen stores, and then in your post-workout to start that recovery process. Now, again, I have to emphasize here, remember that nutrient, that pyramid that I showed earlier. We don't necessarily want to get into this until you are actually consistently hitting your macro targets or your calorie targets. Once you kind of have that under, you know, it's an easy thing for you and you just kind of want to continue to move the needle, step things up, this is when you can start to worry about how you carb time your meals. So 2 to 3 hours pre and post workout, it's recommended to eat something low in fiber. So something that's super easy and simple to digest. As much as I actually hate these examples here, this does show you the difference between very simple, easy to digest carbs and then higher fiber, not so easy to digest carbs. So these are actually more the things you want to eat around your workout, as opposed to these you would want to eat in the meals further from your workout. Post-workout liquid carbs can also be really beneficial. So things like highly branched cyclic dextrin, which is a special type of carb powder that is, not to get too sciencey here, but it just has branched carbs in a way where it's broken down very, very quickly in your stomach, but it doesn't necessarily create a huge sugar blood it doesn't make your blood sugar spike way up. Some other options here would be like sports drinks, dextrose, juice, really anything that's a liquid carb can be really beneficial post-workout because it also just helps you rehydrate in addition to replenishing that glycogen, that stored carb in the muscle. So again, I don't necessarily love these examples here, but it is really good to show, things like having white bread, simple pastas. If you're gonna have those things in your diet, it's best to put them in your meals around your workout. So let's say you go to the gym in the afternoon, maybe for dinner you have lots of pasta, but then maybe in your lunch, which is hours before your workout, that's when you're having a ton of vegetables. That all being said, so if you're somebody who likes to have treats and you kind of fit them into your diet and it works for you, really consider maybe positioning them around your workout to be a little bit strategic in how your body uses those carbs. So your body is very insulin sensitive post-workout, which means that your body responds really well to insulin, which is what is released when you spike your blood sugar. Insulin is like the little taxi in your blood that is shuttling the sugars where it needs to go. And your body is really good at that process immediately after working out because it wants you to take in carbs. It wants to put the carbs back in the muscle cell and replenish what you just used. So your body is really happy when you give it some easy, quick, simple sugars. And for that reason, it's actually less likely, some studies show it's less likely that your body is going to store those carbs as body fat when you have them immediately post-workout in that state of high insulin sensitivity. So, it's just another reason that this is a good time for you to eat those carbs. So maybe if you're somebody who likes to have a donut, you could have your donut in your post-workout after your hard Saturday morning session or something. Additionally, carbs are a protein-sparing nutrient, which is really just a fancy way of saying that as long as you have carbs readily available, your body isn't going to break down muscle as easily. So the reason your body might break down muscle is because if it doesn't have enough energy to pull from, it needs to pull it from somewhere. So it might pull it from the muscle. It might break it down. If you have enough carbs, then it's not going to break down the protein in your muscle and use that for energy. It's going to use it to build more muscle. All right, so we've covered the first two macros, which are protein and carbs, but what about fats? Well, they aren't as relevant for this conversation. So even though maximum performance is impossible without muscle glycogen, fat does provide some energy for exercise. Fat is the fuel for light to moderate intensity exercise. So think if you're doing something like long walks or just like slow, easy, long runs, your body may actually be prioritizing using fat for fuel in those situations. Moderate fat intake is recommended in your pre and post-workout meals. So where we were talking about getting in your carbs and your proteins and really prioritizing those, it's okay to have a little bit of fat in there. Think maybe 5 to 10 grams, although this kind of depends ultimately on how much fat you eat over the course of the day. But generally it's pretty much recommended save most of your fats for your meals, which are further from your workouts. So again, if we were talking about you're eating that, you go to the gym in the late afternoon and then you eat your big pasta dinner, maybe you don't put very much fat in that meal. Instead of doing like an olive oil pasta, you do a tomato-based sauce pasta, and there's just not very much fat there. But because you work out late in the day, you can make your breakfast really high in fats. You can do lots of eggs with some cheese, some avocado, all of your fats really in that big, heavy breakfast meal. Another consideration here, though, is if you are someone who experiences hyperglycemia very easily, so you have big dips and spikes in your blood sugar, you're very sensitive to the timing of your carbs, then it might be advantageous to have a little bit more fat in your pre-workout meal, because ultimately what fat does is it slows down your digestion. So if you have more fats there, it's going to slow down the digestion of those carbs in that meal, which can prevent a big spike in your blood sugar, which, you don't want that to happen right before or during your training. You ultimately want to have like a nice steady drip of blood sugar from those carbs. Really what is of more interest in terms of fat intake is the types of fat that you're eating. So, take a look at the fats that you're using to hit your macro target goals, and really look at, are these fats higher in omega-3s, which are anti-inflammatory, or omega-6s, which are pro-inflammatory? They create inflammation in the body. Foods high in omega-3 fatty acids have been shown to increase lean tissue mass, and that's probably a result of the fact that they are anti-inflammatory. So these here pictured are some examples of your omega-3s. Just look to incorporate these more across your day, and you might be able to see some gains in your workouts. So we've talked about the macros, but super duper important here that we don't forget to talk about hydration. Water serves as the medium for all metabolic activity, meaning every cellular function in the body ultimately needs water to happen. It lubricates our muscles and our joints. It keeps our core body temperature in check. If you aren't hydrated, you aren't able to sweat and you can get overheated. If you aren't taking in enough fluids, it ultimately just has a dramatic negative impact on both health and performance. I think something like a 2% dehydration can create like a 60% decrease in overall performance. You'll have a slower reaction time, you'll have poor decision-making skills, low energy, slower speed, decreased power output, risk of cramping, risk of overheating. So many negative things can happen just from a little bit of dehydration. So you can lose 1 to 2% of your body weight overnight just by sleeping, just by breathing. As you sleep, you lose a lot of water. So it's very, very important that you are rehydrating as soon as you wake up. Get that 16 to 24 ounces of fluid in that first 1 to 2 hours upon waking, and then just continue to stay hydrated from there. Ultimately, the best way to know if you are hydrated or not is by looking at your urine. This little chart here does show, it's like being more clear throughout the day shows that you are hydrated. If you're in this brighter yellow range, you are dehydrated. No matter what you feel, you don't need to wait to feel thirsty. That's generally means it's too late. When you're thirsty, that's when your body is calling out for water. You are already dehydrated at that point. The only exception here is in the first thing in the morning, you probably will be a little bit brighter yellow. Again, that's because you are going to naturally wake up a little bit dehydrated. And then if you are taking some vitamins, some certain vitamins can cause your pee to be colored. But also good to know here. Sorry.
I have a question about during workouts. I was, always taught that during workouts, you should be drinking like 8 to 10 ounces every 15 minutes. What do you feel on that as well? Like how much water should they be drinking during a workout, especially like related to what type of intensity it is? What do you think of that?
Yeah, so you're right though about it being relevant to your intensity and your types of workouts. How hot it is, like what is your level of sweat. So that's something that you actually can calculate by, there's something called calculating your sweat rate. I can't remember the equation off the top of my head, but I did it recently with one of my clients who is a runner. And essentially you weigh yourself before you go for your run or your workout, whatever it is. And then you purposely don't consume any liquid during that time, and then you weigh yourself afterward. And essentially you should look to not lose more than 2% of your body weight. So however much you lost, like you can measure out the pounds there, what you lost is the water that you lost through sweat. You need to make sure that you are basically just replenishing however much it is that you lose. So I think that's a really good general recommendation, what you said there, but it does kind of matter based on the person.
Yeah.
Essentially some people may not be sweaters at all, or they might just not be working out at an intensity that causes them to sweat. And if you're pushing too much water, it can almost be a little bit detrimental.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I want to make a little note there, like, if you are weighing yourself before or after a workout, don't take that little weight loss as, oh, I lost fat during the workout. I'm doing really well. I'm going to do every single workout like this. So, which she just kind of explained that, like, no, that's dehydration. You were sweating. Mm-hmm. And I don't care that you lost 2 pounds, like put that back on, put those 2 pounds back.
Exactly. Yeah, that was a really good question. And then on the topic of hydration, we can't forget about the electrolytes. So you have to be replacing electrolytes as you replace water as well, especially when you are training in hot and humid conditions. So your electrolytes are sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. Sodium is the one that you probably hear the most about. But ultimately, all of these electrolytes are involved in your metabolic activities, and they are essential to all functions of the cells, including muscle function. So your muscles cannot contract without the electrolytes. But similarly to when you're dehydrated, it could be an electrolyte imbalance that's causing a lot of those symptoms, because they are very similar symptoms. You can have nausea, vomiting, muscle weakness, muscle cramping, twitching, fatigue, labored breathing, pins and needles, and confusion. I myself, I've noticed a lot that, especially during the summertime, which is I'm a heavy sweater, if I don't supplement with sodium during the summertime, I do experience a lot of dizziness in my workouts, especially when I'm doing heavy lifts. So when we put it all together, ultimately looking at our pre and post workout meals, really what matters here is the closer your meal is to your workout, the easier to digest the foods should be. So that conceptually could mean easy to digest carbs. So if you are close to your workout, maybe you need to just drink some liquid carbs. Maybe you need to eat really easy to digest carbs like rice, potatoes, instant oats, bananas, and then adding in some very easy to digest animal-based protein, like maybe a whey protein shake. If you have a little bit more time, so you're maybe 3 to 4 hours pre-workout, then you can eat some more fibrous sources of carbs like your regular oats. So notice the distinction there. Your instant oats, like your quick 1 minute quick cook oats, are more pre-digested. They're easier to digest because they're already broken down. The same reason they can be cooked in a minute in the microwave means that they are also going to be easier to digest in your stomach. If you're having regular, old-fashioned oats, those are going to be a little bit harder to digest, and you might want to have those further from your workout. Same thing with whole grain bread versus maybe some white bread if it's close to your workout. And then, you can add a little bit more fat to your meal if it's more of the 3 to 4 hours pre-workout, because again, fat slows down the digestion of the meal. So if you have more fat, it's going to be slower digested. When it comes to post-workout, it's pretty much these same still rules. But another thing to really consider is just what is realistic for you. If you find yourself to be just in a hurry after you work out, then maybe having some liquids will be easier for you. So that's when that whey protein shake can be super convenient for some people. But if you have more time, don't be thinking that you have to have a whey protein shake because that's supposedly what's the best post-workout meal. It's not. It doesn't make any difference. If you have the time, maybe you want to sit down and make a nice bigger meal. And then also in that case, you can have a little bit more of those fibrous, a little bit of a mixture of these easy to digest carbs and these harder to digest carbs, because you have more time. You're not going to go work out again probably, so you can have something that's going to digest a little bit slower. I like these examples here, but honestly, at the end of the day, your opportunities for pre and post workout meals are pretty endless, as long as you are kind of following these rules. The closer you are to a workout, the easier to digest it should be. The further from a workout, the harder to digest it can be. Now, just some quick special considerations for my athletes. I can't really talk about pre and post workout meals without talking a little bit about how this might apply to somebody who competes. So that could be anything from runners, from CrossFit competitors, from weightlifters, or just anybody maybe who's doing something recreational and wants to kind of know, should I carb load? Should I do these things that I read about? So for anybody who's going to be doing a competition that is lasting longer than 3 hours, so think maybe like a marathon or like a CrossFit competition with events all day long, a good rule of thumb is to carb load by increasing your pre-race carb source with 4 to 5 grams of easy to digest carbs per pound of lean body mass. And that's for each day in about the 72 hours leading up to your race day. If it's a shorter event though, you can pretty much follow that rule just for 1 day before. So again, that's 4 to 5 grams of carbs per pound of lean body mass. So that's not your total body weight, it's your how much muscle mass makes up your total body weight. Athletes who are more vulnerable to muscle cramping and fatigue, as well as those competing in heat, may benefit a little bit more from increasing their salt intake as well in those couple days leading up to race day. But, consider there too that the salt intake, it might happen naturally from adding in some saltier foods when you do increase your total carb store. So keep that in mind. Many of the carb loading options, such as the pretzels, sports drinks, breads, and cereals, do add that sodium naturally. So if you're having a Gatorade, account for the sodium in that. Now, on the day of your competition, so 2 to 3 hours prior to race time, a good rule of thumb here is just allow for 1 hour of digestion for every 200 to 300 calories consumed. But you're going to want to aim to have about 100 to 150 grams of low fiber, easy to digest carbs, 10 to 20 grams of protein. So really kind of your typical serving of protein, maybe a little bit less even, because it needs to be something that's pretty easy to digest, and protein can be a little bit more difficult to digest. And then in terms of fats, again, since we're thinking more like 3 hours out from competing, you can have some fats in there to make sure that it doesn't digest too fast. But as far as a gram recommendation, it's better just to consider what is your total daily target for fats and take about a quarter to a third of that. Because ultimately, if you're going to be competing for the whole, like half the day, then you got to get some fats in there at some point just to have some fats in your body. So an example of a meal here might be like a bagel with some peanut butter and honey and about 20, 24 ounces of carb sports drink, such as like a Gatorade. Then during your race, your competition, you're going to want to have a quarter of your body weight in grams of carbs every hour. So that could be something like an energy gel, energy chews, sports drink, stuff like that. Also want to make sure that you're adding back those electrolytes as you're rehydrating. So ultimately, 20 to 24 ounces of water per hour is a good recommendation. But again, like we were talking about, maybe calculate your own sweat rate so you know how much you typically lose. And then just for every 20 to 24 ounces of water you drink, also make sure you're getting in 200 to 500 milligrams of sodium. So, some of these carb sources will have sodium as well in them. And then you can make up the difference with like a salt tablet. And then post-race, we ultimately just want to make sure that you are recovering optimally. It has some people in their post-races might end up, grabbing a beer and hanging out and having a good time celebrating the fact that they completed their goal. But you want to make sure you're taking care of your body, which means that you want to replenish those carbs and use the carbs to shift your body into that recovery mode. So remember, carbs, they spike your insulin. And when you spike insulin, that is essentially going to be like the opposite of spiking your cortisol, which is your stress hormone. So they kind of work as like an inverse relationship. So when you spike your insulin by eating a lot of carbs, you're helping your body kind of calm down and shift into a just a restful state following a very stressful state from competing. And then again, if you're using liquid carbs, that can be really beneficial because it does also help with just rehydration. And then just sip on as much fluids as it takes until your urine runs pale yellow again. So ultimately, just to wrap it all up here, really with all nutritional recommendations for athletes or for anyone, these are just guidelines, and really personal trial and error will be required to determine what is optimal for you, for each individual. I am happy to answer any and all questions now. This was a pretty quick presentation on a kind of a brief topic. And then if you all have any more questions, you can always feel free to DM me on Instagram, or I post a lot about this stuff as well. So maybe give me a follow there.
Okay, hi, Shelby.
Hey.
This question doesn't necessarily apply to me, but my cousin had triplets and one of the babies has PKU. So it's where they can't process the protein. And I always was like curious because he's a boy, and when he grows up, is there a way around the protein when you're building muscle, or is it just kind of, that is what it is?
So, I mean, there's no necessarily a way around it, because at the end of the day, that's what muscle is. It is protein. So like, think of why is meat from animals high in protein? It's because that's what it is. It's the muscle.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing on your body. Your muscle is made of protein. So I assume, I'm not super familiar with that condition, but I assume, it's harder for him to digest it, but ultimately you'd still probably get in some. The general recommendation just for health is a lot lower than like what we would recommend for anybody trying to optimize like their physique, trying to build more muscle. So it might mean that maybe, at the end of the day, he might not be ever like jacked or anything, but he probably will still be fine. But honestly, I don't know a lot about that condition, so I can't
no, you're fine. Far reach just popped in my head because I do like sometimes I like think out loud. I'm like, oh, well, that applies to him, or like Thanksgiving, trying to plan meals around that.
No, that's a super interesting question. I'm going to look more into that now for sure.
Hi, I'm Samantha.
Hey, Samantha.
I have a question. So obviously you talked about like pre-meals. So I work out in the morning, so I usually normally do like fasted workouts. What's your take on that with like doing fasted workouts?
So how do you feel doing your fasted workouts?
I feel fine. There has been times where I've done like a sprint workout and I felt like crap afterwards. So like I talked to Caddy about this, like trying to incorporate different things to eat before. But I haven't had that again since then. But lifting wise, I feel fine.
Yeah, so especially if you're doing just general lifting, if it's an early in the morning workout, if a lot of people can't stomach food right before they work out. So if you feel okay with it, then you're fine. You're not gonna lose muscle for not having it. Just make sure that your last meal, so what you had before you went to bed, which is technically then your pre-workout meal, you would want to then kind of optimize making sure that's high in carbs, so that you are replenishing your glycogen store so that you're ready to work out. And then really ultimately you just want to optimize your post-workout meal.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that would make sense that like my dinner or whatever I eat before would be like my pre-workout meal.
And if you were going to do something then like sprints again, now you kind of know from the prior experience that, I didn't feel as awesome when I did something really high intensity. So maybe on those instances, you do just kind of wake up 5 minutes earlier, eat a quick banana or, sip on some Gatorade, something like that, just to make sure you have something in your stomach.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I really like those questions. I know we talked about that a little bit. It is hard to eat something, especially when you're going into like a high intense workout, but you learn one way or another. Like if you feel like shit, okay, let's implement some food. So. Well, does anybody else have any questions for Vanessa? No? Okay, well, Vanessa, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
When you finish, like when you end this, I don't know how this is going to work now because I gave you the host, or maybe you can give it back. Wait, don't give it back yet. Because what if it takes off the recording? So yeah, whatever, like if this saves on your end, like just shoot it back to me. But I would love to get your like PDF attachment too, so I can share that with them as well, especially for people that missed it. So, and they could always reflect back on that because I think that's really valuable. And I relate to a lot of that when I was competing in those situations. So I definitely, I think that's valuable information.
Yeah, I know myself, I learned a lot of it through trial and error as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Maybe we'll be having you on here again soon to dive in a little bit more, maybe into one of those topics. So yeah, I would love that too. Well, thank you so much. Everyone else have a good night. This is going to kick me off. I haven't upgraded yet. Sucks. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.